Chosen one, this Christmas gift isn't wrapped in paper or tied with a ribbon, but it's real, it's alive, and it's been waiting for the exact moment you were quiet enough to feel it. This isn't coincidence, it's timing. It's the kind of timing that only shows up after a long stretch of pressure, confusion, waiting, and nights where you wondered if anything you were doing even mattered. Christmas has a way of making noise. Lights everywhere, songs everywhere, people pretending everything is fine. But beneath all that noise, something has been moving toward you slowly, carefully, without rushing, without asking for attention. And now it's close enough for you to sense it. That's why you're here. That's why this feels heavier than a normal message. Not dramatic, just weighty. Like something important finally stepped into the room. Before anything else, stay with this until the end. Don't half listen. Don't scroll away and come back later. Give this one uninterrupted space. And right now, just once, I want you to write your warmest wishes in the comments. Not perfectly worded, not filtered, just honest. What you hope for, what you're quietly asking for. And if it feels right, write amen with it, not as a ritual, but as a release. Say it once, and then let it go. Now listen carefully. This Christmas gift isn't something new being added to your life. It's something that's already yours finally being activated. That's the part most people don't understand. They think blessings arrive like packages from the outside. Dropped off. Delivered. But the real ones don't work like that. The real ones wake up. They unlock. They rise from inside places that have been dormant for a long time. Places that went quiet because life demanded survival first. You've been in survival mode longer than you admit. You handled responsibilities without applause. You carried emotional weight that no one saw. You adapted when things didn't go according to plan. And you did it without becoming bitter, even when you were close. That matters more than you think. Because what's being handed to you now isn't random. It's responsive. It's answering how you showed up when nothing was guaranteed. This gift feels subtle at first, almost disappointing if you're expecting fireworks. It shows up as clarity instead of chaos, as calm where anxiety used to live, as a strange inner steadiness where panic once ruled. You might even miss it if you're still looking for something loud, but once you notice it, you won't unsee it. Decisions start feeling cleaner. You hesitate less. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop chasing things that drain you. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because something inside you finally believes it doesn't need to beg anymore. There's a reason this arrives around Christmas. This season exposes contrast. Who shows up? Who disappears? What feels warm? What feels hollow? And you've noticed it this year more than ever. Certain connections don't hit the same. Certain conversations feel forced. Certain environments suddenly feel too small. That's not loneliness. That's alignment shifting. And it can feel uncomfortable because it means you're outgrowing rooms you once fit into perfectly. This gift also carries a quiet boundary. You're no longer meant to explain yourself to people who only understand you when you're struggling. You're no longer meant to shrink so others feel comfortable. You're no longer meant to delay what you know you're ready for just because someone else isn't. That chapter is closing. Not angrily, not dramatically, just firmly. Like a door that's finally been used enough. You might notice old fears trying one last time. Doubt doesn't disappear overnight. It tests. It whispers. It asks if you're sure. Let it ask. You don't have to answer anymore. Because the gift isn't confidence in the loud sense. It's trust. Quiet trust. The kind that doesn't need proof every 5 minutes. Something is being rearranged in how you see yourself. And once that changes, everything else follows. How people treat you, what you tolerate, what you reach for, what reaches for you. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about returning to the version of you that knew, before life complicated things, that you were meant for more than just getting by. This Christmas, while others are unwrapping things they'll forget by next week. You're receiving something that keeps unfolding, day by day, choice by choice. And it won't rush you. It respects your pace. It understands everything it took for you to get here. Stay present. This is only the beginning. Chosen one, something has already shifted since the last word settled into you, even if you can't fully name it yet. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It feels more like a quiet rearranging, like furniture being moved in the dark by someone who knows the room better than you do. You wake up and things feel slightly different. Not better in a dramatic way, just clearer. And clarity can feel unsettling when you've lived a long time inside uncertainty. This part of the gift isn't about excitement. It's about honesty. The kind you can't escape anymore. You're starting to see where you've been negotiating with yourself, where you accepted half answers, half effort, half love. Not because you wanted less, but because you didn't want to lose what you had. And that's human. That's survival. But survival was never meant to be permanent housing. What's happening now is subtle but serious. You're losing the ability to lie to yourself. Old distractions don't work the same way. Things that used to numb you don't reach as deep. You catch yourself pausing before reacting. You feel the weight of your own choices more clearly. That's not pressure. That's power returning to its rightful place. There's a reason this feels heavy some days. Growth doesn't always feel like expansion. Sometimes it feels like compression first. Like everything important is being packed tighter so it can be carried forward. You may feel more alone in certain moments, even when surrounded by people. That doesn't mean you're disconnected. It means your inner world is becoming louder than the noise outside. And that's necessary now. You're also being asked to slow down in a very specific way. Not to stop, not to retreat, but to move with intention instead of urgency. You don't need to chase what's meant for you in this season. Chasing implies running after something that's fleeing. What's aligning with you now isn't running. It's waiting for you to stop doubting whether you're allowed to receive it. This part of the journey brings memories back to the surface. Old moments, old versions of you, things you thought you were over. They're not coming back to hurt you. They're coming back to be released properly. Closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's a realization. Sometimes it's just a deep breath where you finally admit, that chapter shaped me, but it doesn't get to decide my next move. You might notice a strange confidence forming, but it doesn't look like arrogance. It looks like silence. You don't feel the need to announce your plans. You protect your energy more carefully. You listen more than you speak. That's not hiding. That's maturity. You're learning that not everyone deserves front row access to your becoming. There will be moments when impatience creeps in, when you wonder why things aren't moving faster, why the breakthrough feels close, but not quite here. That's because timing isn't just about arrival. It's about readiness. And readiness isn't proven by wanting something badly. It's proven by what you're willing to let go of to make space for it. This Christmas gift includes discernment. You're starting to feel when something is off, even if you can't logically explain it. Trust that. You're also starting to feel when something is right, even if it scares you. Trust that too. Fear doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it just means importance. You're not being rushed, but you are being prepared. And preparation can feel uncomfortable because it strips away illusions. It asks you to show up without masks, without rehearsed lines, without waiting for permission. Stay grounded. What's unfolding next builds on this foundation. Chosen one. This is the part where the outside world hasn't caught up yet, but your inner world already has. That gap can feel strange. You walk through ordinary days, familiar routines, familiar faces, yet something in you knows you're not standing on the same ground anymore. It's like living in the pause between breaths. Nothing is wrong, but nothing is the same either. You may notice a growing distance between who you are becoming and what you once tolerated. Not in a dramatic, burn-it-all-down way, more like a gentle refusal. You don't argue as much. You don't try to convince. You don't chase clarity from people who live comfortably in confusion. And that's new for you. You used to explain yourself until you were exhausted. Now you feel your energy pull back, almost instinctively, like your spirit finally learned how to protect itself. This part asks you to sit with uncertainty without panicking, to let unanswered questions exist without forcing premature solutions. That's harder than it sounds, because you're someone who likes to understand, to plan, to see the path ahead. But right now, the path is forming under your feet, step by step. You're not meant to see the whole picture yet. You're meant to trust the next honest step. There's also grief here. Quiet grief. For versions of life that won't happen the way you imagined. For relationships that didn't grow with you. For effort that wasn't met halfway. Allow that grief. Don't rush past it. It's not a sign you failed. It's a sign you cared deeply. And caring deeply is not something to be ashamed of, even when it hurts. You might feel moments of fatigue that don't come from physical tiredness. It's the weight of transition. Crossing from one internal season to another takes energy. Rest when you need to. Not as an escape, but as maintenance. You don't have to earn rest by suffering first. You're allowed to pause simply because your body and mind are recalibrating. Pay attention to what no longer fits. Conversations that drain you. Commitments that feel forced. Environments that make you shrink. You don't need to make sudden exits. Awareness alone starts the release process. When something no longer aligns, it eventually falls away without you having to push it. At the same time, new impulses may appear. Small ideas, gentle nudges, a pull towards something you once ignored or postponed. Don't dismiss these just because they don't come with guarantees. This phase isn't about security in the traditional sense. It's about resonance. If something feels quietly alive when you think about it, that's worth listening to. You're also learning that strength doesn't always look like endurance. Sometimes it looks like choosing differently. Like saying no without explaining. Like changing direction without justifying it to everyone. That kind of strength is calm, and calm strength lasts. There may be moments when you feel invisible, as if the work you're doing internally isn't being recognized. That's because this work isn't for an audience. It's foundational. Houses don't celebrate their foundations while they're being laid. But without them, nothing stable stands. Stay patient with yourself. The next phase doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives honestly. Chosen one, this is where things begin to feel real in your body, not just in your thoughts. You don't just understand the change anymore. You feel it. In how you react, in what you tolerate, in how quickly you recover from things that once would have knocked you off balance for days. There's a steadiness forming, and it's unfamiliar enough that you might mistake it for emptiness at first. It's not. It's space. You're noticing that emotional chaos doesn't hook you the way it used to. Drama passes by, and you watch it instead of stepping into it. Old triggers still exist, but they don't control the room anymore. That's growth you didn't force. It happened because you stayed present through discomfort instead of escaping it. And that matters. A lot. This part also asks you to take yourself seriously in a new way. Not in an ego sense, in a responsibility sense. You're becoming aware that your choices ripple outward more than before. What you say yes to, what you avoid, what you delay. You feel it more clearly now. And that awareness can feel heavy until you realize it's also freedom. You're no longer operating on autopilot. There's a quiet confidence developing that doesn't need validation. You don't look for signs in the same desperate way. You don't need constant reassurance that you're on the right path. You're learning to trust the internal signal instead of external noise. And that trust grows each time you honor it, even when it leads you away from what's familiar. You may find yourself simplifying things. Less explaining, less clutter, less emotional bargaining. That's not withdrawal, that's refinement. You're keeping what's essential and letting the rest fall away naturally. This is how your life makes room for what's next without force. There's also an invitation here to show up more fully where you are, instead of waiting for some future version of yourself to arrive. You don't need to be more healed, more confident, more prepared to take aligned action. You already are enough to move forward honestly. Perfection isn't required. Presence is. At times you might feel a quiet pressure to step into something new, followed immediately by doubt. That doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you care. Readiness and fear often walk together. The difference now is that fear no longer gets the final say. It's just information, not instruction. You're also beginning to see how much of your past strength came from endurance, and how much of your future strength will come from choice. You don't have to prove resilience anymore. You've already lived it. Now you get to live with intention. Let yourself feel proud, even if only for a moment. You've crossed an internal line that can't be uncrossed. Chosen one, this is the part where you stop waiting for permission, even from yourself. Not in a rebellious way, in a settled way. Something inside you has grown tired of almosts and maybes and someday laters. You don't feel rushed, but you do feel done with postponing the life that keeps tapping you on the shoulder. You're starting to act from a quieter center now. Less reaction, more direction. Decisions don't come from urgency anymore. They come from alignment. You might notice that when you commit to something, you do it with fewer words and more follow-through. When you walk away, you do it without slamming doors. That's a sign of integration. Your inner world and outer actions are beginning to match. This phase asks for courage, but not the loud kind. It asks for the courage to be consistent, to show up even when no one is watching, to keep choosing what feels true even when the results aren't immediate. That kind of courage doesn't spike adrenaline. It builds momentum. Slowly. Reliably. You may notice opportunities appearing that don't look like what you imagined. They come smaller, quieter, less dramatic, and your old self might have dismissed them. But now you're listening differently. You're paying attention to what feels steady rather than what feels impressive. That shift alone changes everything. There's also a release happening here. Old identities, old labels, old narratives about who you are and what you're capable of. You don't have to fight them. They fall away when you stop feeding them. When you stop telling the same story about yourself on repeat. Silence becomes a kind of rewrite. People around you may sense the change before you talk about it. Some will lean in, some will pull back. Don't take either personally. Your job isn't to manage their reactions. Your job is to stay honest with your own evolution. Not everyone is meant to walk with you through every season. This part of the journey teaches you that fulfillment doesn't always feel like excitement. Sometimes it feels like peace. Sometimes it feels like a deep exhale you didn't realize you were holding for years. Let that peace settle. Don't rush to fill it with noise. You're learning that the gift wasn't meant to save you from effort. It was meant to redirect your effort toward what actually matters, toward work that feels meaningful, toward connections that feel reciprocal, toward a life that doesn't require you to abandon yourself to maintain it. Trust the rhythm you're in now. The final unfolding comes from here. Chosen one. This is where everything you've felt but couldn't fully explain begins to settle into something solid. Not fixed, not final, just grounded. You're no longer asking the same questions in the same way. The urgency has softened. The noise has thinned out. And in that quiet, you can finally hear yourself again. Not the version shaped by expectation or pressure, but the one that's been there all along, waiting for room. You're starting to live from a deeper place of trust. Not blind trust, earned trust. The kind that comes from watching yourself survive, adapt, and grow through things you once thought would break you. You know now that even when plans fall apart, you don't. That realization alone changes how you move through the world. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. It means it becomes honest. You face what's in front of you without dramatizing it or minimizing it. You take responsibility where it's yours and release what never was. That balance is new, and it's powerful. It keeps you present instead of stuck in regret or anticipation. You may still feel moments of doubt. That's human. But they don't spiral the way they used to. They pass through, leaving insight instead of damage. You don't fight them anymore. You listen, take what's useful, and let the rest go. That's wisdom forming in real time. What you're building now isn't just a future outcome. It's a way of being. A life that feels aligned on ordinary days, not just peak moments. A sense of purpose that doesn't depend on constant validation. A self-respect that shows up in small, quiet choices again and again. This Christmas gift was never about escape. It was about arrival. Arriving into yourself, into clarity, into a version of strength that doesn't need to prove anything. You don't need to announce this transformation. You'll recognize it in how you breathe, how you decide, how you rest, how you love. Carry this forward gently. There's no rush now. You're exactly where you're meant to be. And for the first time in a long while, you know it. Chosen one, this is where the shift stops feeling like a phase and starts feeling like a new baseline. Not exciting in the way movies make change look. More honest than that. You wake up and realize you're not bracing yourself for the day anymore. You're just entering it. And that's when you know something fundamental has changed. You don't need constant confirmation now. You don't keep checking whether you're doing the right thing every few steps. There's a quiet inner yes that guides you. It doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It just stays. Even when things feel uncertain on the surface, that inner steadiness holds. And you trust it more than opinions, timelines, or comparisons. You may notice how little you want to explain yourself these days. Not because you're closed off, but because you're clear. When clarity arrives, justification becomes unnecessary. You choose what you choose. You leave what you leave. And you let people interpret it however they need to. That freedom is new, and it's light. There's also a softness growing alongside your strength. You're less defensive, less reactive. You don't need to win conversations anymore. You don't need to prove depth or intelligence or worth. You've lived enough to know who you are without defending it. And that makes you surprisingly gentle, even with things that once triggered you. This part teaches you something important. Stability isn't boring. It's spacious. It gives you room to notice beauty again. Small moments. A thought that lands just right. A silence that feels full instead of awkward. You're not chasing meaning anymore. You're recognizing it where it already exists. You're also learning that not everything needs to be transformed into a lesson. Some things are just experiences. They come, they pass, they leave a trace, and you keep moving. You don't dissect every emotion now. You let some of them simply be. That's emotional maturity settling in. If you look back, you'll see how far you've come without dramatizing it. No grand turning point, no single breakthrough moment. Just a series of honest choices made quietly, consistently. And that's why this change lasts. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rushed. It grew at the pace you could actually sustain. From here on, your life won't be perfect, but it will be yours. And that makes all the difference. Chosen one, this is the place where words start to feel insufficient. Not because there's nothing to say, but because what has changed in you is no longer abstract. It's lived. It's felt in the way you stand, in the way you breathe when no one is watching, in the way you no longer flinch at every uncertainty. You didn't arrive here suddenly. You arrived slowly, almost invisibly, one quiet decision at a time. And now you're here. You may notice that you don't crave intensity the way you once did. Chaos doesn't feel exciting anymore. Emotional extremes don't feel meaningful. What feels meaningful now is steadiness, continuity, waking up without needing to recover from yesterday. That doesn't mean your life is flat. It means it's grounded. And grounding changes everything. There was a time when you thought becoming stronger meant becoming harder, less sensitive, less open, less affected. But that wasn't strength. That was armor. And armor is heavy. What you're learning now is a different kind of strength. One that allows softness without collapse. One that lets you feel deeply without losing yourself. That balance took time. It took mistakes. It took disappointment. It took staying when leaving would have been easier, and leaving when staying would have cost you too much. You don't measure yourself by other people's timelines anymore. That alone frees up an incredible amount of energy. You no longer ask why things didn't happen sooner. You understand now that sooner would have meant unprepared. You were still becoming someone who could hold what you were asking for without breaking under it. Timing wasn't withholding. It was protecting. This is also the part where gratitude stops being performative. It becomes quiet, personal. You don't announce it. You feel it in unexpected moments. When you realize how differently you handle stress. When you catch yourself responding with calm where panic once lived. When you notice that your sense of self doesn't dissolve the moment something external goes wrong. You're not perfect. You never were meant to be. But you're honest now in a way you weren't before. Honest about what drains you. Honest about what fulfills you. Honest about what you can give and what you can't. That honesty creates boundaries that don't feel like walls. They feel like self-respect. There will still be challenges ahead. That doesn't disappear. But the way you meet them has changed. You don't catastrophize every obstacle. You don't assume difficulty means failure. You don't personalize every delay. You assess. You adjust. You move forward. Sometimes slowly, sometimes boldly. Always consciously. What you've gained through this process isn't a destination. It's orientation. You know how to come back to yourself now. Even when things get loud. Even when life pulls you outward. You know where your center is. And that means you're never truly lost again. You may find that people respond to you differently without knowing why. They feel the groundedness, the lack of neediness, the absence of performance. Some will feel safe around it. Others will feel uncomfortable. Both reactions are information, not instruction. You don't need to change yourself to manage either. This Christmas gift wasn't about becoming someone extraordinary in the eyes of the world. It was about becoming someone solid in your own. Someone who doesn't abandon themselves for approval. Someone who doesn't confuse struggle with meaning. Someone who understands that peace is not passive, it's cultivated. You've learned that you don't need constant highs to feel alive. You feel alive in consistency now, in presence, in choosing the long view over the dramatic moment. That shift will quietly compound over time. In your work, in your relationships, in how you age, in how you remember this chapter years from now. There will be days when you forget how far you've come. That's normal. When that happens, don't judge yourself. Just pause. Notice how differently you move compared to who you used to be. Notice what no longer controls you. Notice what no longer scares you the way it once did. That's proof enough. You're allowed to enjoy this, to settle into it, to stop bracing for something to go wrong, not because nothing ever will, but because you trust yourself to handle it when it does. That trust is earned, and you earned it. Carry this with you gently. Don't turn it into pressure. Don't turn it into identity. Let it be a way of living, a way of choosing, a way of returning to yourself again and again. This isn't the end of anything. It's the beginning of living without internal resistance.